3 decades of unopposed dominance has allowed the United States to forge a network of alliances spanning the globe. Whether it's NATO, AUKUS, Quad, or major non-NATO allies, they are central to Washington's foreign policy. China, by contrast, has gone through great lengths to stay away from military alliances, choosing to go with neutrality and non-interference instead. But the times are changing. The rivalry over the fate of Asia-Pacific is deepening, and China is now considering a formal security umbrella of its own, something akin to NATO, or better yet, the Warsaw Pact. In recent years, China has upgraded its relationship with Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, allowing for regular joint exercises and military exchanges. Although no mutual defense clause has been signed yet, China is laying the groundwork for an alliance somewhere down the line. When that happens, it would mark a turning point in the American-Chinese rivalry and shape the fortunes of the international community. But military alliances are not easy to set up. They cannot be all things to all nations. China is not the easiest state to get along with. Its policymaking comes with heavy baggage. For a Chinese-based security alliance to work, its members must act as a chain, capable, resilient, and yet flexible. There can be no weak links. Today's video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, a free online strategy game where you choose a real country to lead into a global conflict set in the modern era. Up to 128 other players are moving their units across the map in real time, so to win you need to form alliances and construct all types of units, including tanks, jets, and submarines. Conflict of Nations is a huge game. A game round can take weeks to complete, which makes logistics as necessary as tactics. The key to victory is to think ahead and forge alliances. What I like most about the game is that you can play with the same account on both PC and mobile. That convenience sets it apart from other games. Now, using our link below, you will get an exclusive gift, 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. The offer is only available for 30 days, so move fast. An alliance is a shared expectation between multiple nations that they will support each other in disputes or armed conflicts. Usually, an alliance is formed when 2 or more states share a common adversary and are incapable of increasing their deterrence independently. So, they combine their resources to topple the status quo. Over the last 2 decades, China has developed substantial military capabilities of its own. Encouraged by its newfound strength, it has been able to push around India along the disputed border, intimidate Taiwan at sea and in the air, and press its sovereignty claims in the South China Sea. And yet, China has declined to take on external security commitments. Beijing doesn't want to get trapped into distant remote conflicts, preferring to advance its objectives through economic statecraft. In much of Asia, Africa, and even Europe, China has offered loans, investments, and trade deals regardless of the track records at home. By doing so, Beijing has won friends and influence across the globe. At times, it has resorted to coercion to get its way, but from a grand perspective, China's economic statecraft has been a success. Yet, geoeconomics cannot solve everything. Hard power, that is to say, military muscle, is necessary to withstand pressure from the United States. With that in mind, Chinese policymakers are looking to forge a network of allies. Just as the United States and the Soviet Union created rival military blocs in the 1950s. The need for an alliance is consistent with China's rapid growth, but it is a tall order nonetheless. Most of the world's advanced economies are already allied with the United States, so the list of applicable candidates is short. It also doesn't help that much of the international community, including most of the nations in Asia, are deeply skeptical of China's intentions. Even the closest economic partners participating in the Belt and Road Initiative do not want to exclusively ally with Beijing. Now, technically, there is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a transcontinental mutual security collective that includes China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The Shanghai Pact was formed in 1996 and in its present form covers about 40% of the world population and more than 30% of the global GDP. Since its foundation, it has steadily expanded its membership, with Iran, Afghanistan, Mongolia, and Belarus registering as observer states, while Cambodia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey make for dialogue partners. That is quite a list, but the Shanghai Pact is no military alliance. Its purpose is to combat human trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and to bolster cybersecurity. The members of the Shanghai Pact have shown no inclination to expand the organization beyond these responsibilities. So China's security umbrella will have to come from somewhere else. The most feasible way to go about this is by forming bilateral defense clauses. Cambodia, Laos, Nepal, as well as the Pacific Island nations, Kiribati, Vanuatu, and the Solomons, are some that would look favorable to an alliance with China. Topping the list, however, are Russia, Iran, and Pakistan. Each has extraordinary means and resources and extraordinary dealings with Beijing. So let's go over them one at a time, starting with Russia. In 2019, Moscow and Beijing upgraded their association to a comprehensive strategic partnership, and the two have been more aligned at any point since the mid-1950s. Putin and Xi have met about 30 times throughout their political professions, indicating a robust correlation at the executive level. Public perceptions are complementary as well. A poll conducted by China's Global Times showed that over half the Chinese population viewed Russia as the most important country in foreign policy, while a poll by the US-based Pew Research Center showed 71% of Russians holding favorable opinions of China. Yet, in spite of the political and public attitudes, a binding treaty remains beyond reach. China's economy is 10 times that of Russia, and the Chinese military budget dwarfs Russian spending by more than $227 billion. In the case of a military alliance, Russia would clearly take a back seat in policymaking. That is a disturbing prospect, especially in view of the region's demographics. The Russian Far East is underpopulated, and some 300,000 to 500,000 ethnic Chinese already inhabit the area. There may yet come a time when Beijing asks Moscow to concede territory. As the junior partner in a binding treaty, Russia would have no means of refusing. This then is the reason for Russia's reluctance to sign a binding mutual defense clause with China. Russian and Chinese policymakers could still strike a deal on mutual aid and logistical support, but the shaky history between the two will stop short of a defense treaty. With Iran, the story is a tad different. In March 2021, Beijing and Tehran signed a 25-year partnership agreement, which pledges to deepen intelligence sharing, weapons development, and joint military exchanges, but also reinforce cybersecurity and economic investments. Iran has almost no strategic allies, owing to its sponsorship of proxy conflicts across the Middle East. By its own actions, Tehran is isolated to the point of economic ruin. The Iranian leadership is desperate for economic and military support, and the Chinese see that desperation as an opportunity to exploit Iran's constrained bargaining power. With the new agreement in place, China will steadily develop a robust foothold in Iran. However, as much as Iranian lawmakers would like to see a mutual defense clause with China, Beijing is not having it. Iran is a state that brings a lot of geopolitical burdens. An alliance with Iran would necessitate China to downgrade its ties with Israel and the Arab states, basically sacrificing all of the Middle East. Moreover, it would encourage even more reckless decision-making by Tehran, which could drag China into remote conflicts where it would benefit next to nothing. This is not the type of ally China is looking for. That said, Iran does have an exceptional strategic use. It disperses American resources away from China's proximity. The more the US naval fleets are preoccupied with Iran, the more space Beijing has to maneuver in the South China Sea. So while China plans to deepen its military ties with Iran, a formal alliance is unlikely. Pakistan is another potential candidate. As a nuclear-armed nation of some 225 million people, it would make for a valuable ally. It boasts a formidable military that can hold its own, and by allying with Pakistan, China could reinforce its access to the Indian Ocean, allowing it to bypass the maritime choke points in the South China Sea. In recent years, Islamabad has come to rely on Beijing for everything from technology transfers to coronavirus vaccines. In March this year, for instance, Pakistan commissioned its first batch of Chinese J-10C fighter aircraft into its air force. However, progress has come at a cost. The Chinese-American rivalry is heating up, and Pakistan is stuck in the middle. Islamabad's relationship with Washington has always been brittle, even at the best of times. Pakistan played an instrumental role during the Cold War, and again during the War on Terror. Now, however, bilateral ties are at a crossroads. Pakistan has no lasting place in US foreign policy, and its importance fluctuates according to Washington's interests in the region. Likewise, Pakistan does not know how much it can develop its ties with China without harming its links to the United States. As such, there is a schism among Pakistani policymakers. They need to ally with a global force to maintain the power balance with arch-enemy India, but Islamabad feels stuck and unable to move forward. So while Beijing's outreach to Islamabad will deepen in the coming decade, especially in arms deals, Pakistan will be slow to come around. Nevertheless, of all the possible allies, Pakistan tops the list as the most feasible. All things considered, China's growing military capabilities are great and all, but to magnify its power projection, it needs formal alliances. But choosing from a selection of strategic states is not enough. Strategy must be supplemented with ideology. History shows that a steadfast military alliance needs a common philosophy to glue its members into a collective mission, something to justify its existence. NATO and the Warsaw Pact had clear-cut beliefs, which contributed to their durability. China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan have little in common in culture or ideology. The only belief they share is anti-Americanism, but that is not much to go on. Now, no state can act prudently and simultaneously in every part of the globe at every moment of time. A military alliance of its own would transform China into a global force to be reckoned with, but it needs a common philosophy. It doesn't need to be anything sophisticated, just enough to substantiate the existence of the proposed bloc. A military alliance does not imply love any more than war implies hate. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you like what we do and want to keep updated on our latest content, click the subscribe button and then the bell icon so you don't miss out. In any case, thank you for your time and Sahol.